It's always easier to follow than to be a leader. I know, I'm a pastor's kid. It's real easy to follow. It's harder to be the pioneer. But when we overcome, we have victory over what we've overcome, and we can help others overcome it. And so Gideon reaches this place where he's left with 300 people. And it's like, God, how can this be? This is like, this is your victorious army. Judges chapter 7. Now here's what happens. He then, with this revelation, knowing it's God and God's going to give them the victory, says, okay guys, split up. And he breaks them into companies of 300 and he splits them around the camp. Now again, there's no street lights. This is in the middle of nowhere. It's in the depth of a valley, and it says at the second... There we go, 19. Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they changed the guard. He gives them, and this is really important, he gives them a trumpet, he gives them a clay pot, and he puts a light inside the clay pot. And he sends them out to encompass an army that is as thick as locusts, so that their camels could not be counted more than the sands of the sea. 300 men around the enemy's stronghold in the dead of night with no torch. Do you want to know what that was like? Let's pick on a few. Maybe about there. You come here. This is what it's like. You've got to imagine. Close your eyes. Dead of night. This is about as much as you can see. Spider. Are you there? Yes. Okay, just checking. Jerry. Are you still there? Okay. Phew. Just checking. Spider, what's that noise? Oh, it's your knees. Keep them quiet. Shh. I've got to wait. Are you still there, Jerry? Okay. I'm not scared, really. That's what it's like. Pitch black. Dead of night. 300 men. Huge army. And they waited. And they waited. They waited for some bloke that they couldn't even see, and they didn't even know was alive, to blow a trumpet. If you're on the opposite side, you're not going to know whether they found him and killed him. They could have been stood there all night long until daybreak if Gideon had died. I will trust where I cannot see. This is Gideon. It says they blew their trumpets and broke the jars that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew the trumpets and smashed their jars, grasping the torches in their left hand and holding in their rights the trumpets they were to blow. They shouted, "A sword of the Lord, a sword for the Lord and for Gideon." And whilst each man held his position, the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. Where do you have this treasure? What does Scripture say? We have this treasure in an earthen vessel. So let your light shine before men. But they had to break the jar in order to let the light out. And that's where we are. It's in our weakness, in our brokenness, that He gets to shine out of us. So there's nothing of us around but only Him. That's transformation. then out of us will shine his light in the midst of great darkness. And whilst we hold our line, the enemy's ranks will be terrified. And we're like, no, Jesus, my knees are knocking. How can this be? How can this be? And we're like, no, we're it. We're it. And it says there that the Lord brought about a victory that day. And when the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. That strategy I have watched in deliverance sessions I don't know how many times. The enemy will turn on himself. High-ranking demons will sacrifice low-ranking demons like they're completely irrelevant in order to protect their own position. And you see it, I'm not going to go back to it, I touched on it last week in Joshua chapter, I think it's 4 or 5, I think it's 4, where it talks about Rahab. Joshua chapter 2, it talks about Rahab, and it says, you know, all who live in this country are melting away in fear because of you. When we heard of it, and in crossing the Red Sea, our hearts melted and everyone's courage failed. That's the enemy's ranks. They know we're coming. They are trying everything they can to stop us emerging. But they're not going to have the last say. And in the end, and this is the beauty of it, those 300 that were used by the Lord to bring the victory, so great was the victory that He brought about that day, that it took all of the other 31,700 people to come rushing up to take possession of everything that they'd given up. In other words, we might be a small number that God's going to use to bring about a huge victory in the enemy camps, but we're going to need the Baptists, the Methodists, the Lutherans, the Quakers, everybody else with a heart to serve and a heart to come and take and hold the ground. No one's going to be excluded. But the overcomers are the ones that will come into that place that will be used to bring about the victory. And you can read it all the way through chapter 7, verses 24 onwards. Now here's my point. If you go over to chapter 8, verse 28, thus Midian was subdued before the Israelites and did not raise its head again during Gideon's lifetime, and the land enjoyed peace for 40 years. One man, one person, who was able to overcome their fear, insecurity, inferiority, and intimidation, brought peace to a whole nation for 40 years. One man. That's the power of an overcomer. And that's where He wants us to move into. So Hebrews 12:1 says, therefore, since you and I are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run the race with endurance, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before Him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the Father. That's what's on offer to us. That's what we get to do. And the invitation to each one of us is to be a part of this company of champions that's emerging. I want to show you three things that the Lord's releasing in these days to allow us to do it. One of the biggest ones is this transition from the gift of to the spirit of the gift. We are moving from the gift of prophecy, from the gift to the spirit. From the gift of prophecy to the spirit of prophecy. From the gift of wisdom to the spirit of wisdom. From the gift of knowledge to the spirit of knowledge. It's this release